My name is Samantha, and I'm 32 years old. 3 months ago, I stood in a ballroom wearing a $2 million necklace. By the end of that night, my mother-in-law was in handcuffs. Security cameras captured everything. The entire elite, social circle of our city witnessed her downfall. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Have you ever had someone look at you like you're completely worthless? Like you don't belong in the same room as them? That's exactly how Margaret Whitmore looked at me every single day for 5 years. My husband's mother never accepted me. She made that crystal clear from our very first meeting. The night everything changed started like any other charity gala. I was adjusting my husband David's bow tie in our bedroom mirror. The diamond necklace felt heavy around my neck. It was a family heirloom. David's grandmother had worn it to her own wedding in 1952. "You look stunning," David whispered, kissing my cheek. His reflection smiled at me in the mirror. "Mother will have to admit you're perfect tonight." I wanted to believe him. After 5 years of marriage, I still hoped Margaret would eventually warm up to me. Tonight felt different, though. Something in the air whispered that everything was about to change. The Whitmore Annual Children's Hospital Gala was the social event of the season. 500 of the city's most influential people would be there. Politicians, business leaders, old money families like the Whitmores, and me, the girl who grew up in a trailer park. David held my hand as we walked into the grand ballroom. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow patterns across marble floors. Women in designer gowns glided between tables draped in white silk. The air smelled like expensive perfume and fresh roses. Margaret spotted us immediately. She wore midnight blue silk and a disapproving frown. Her silver hair was pulled back in a perfect chignon. Diamond earrings caught the light as she approached us. Her smile was as fake as her compliments. "Samantha, dear," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "How interesting that you chose to wear Grandmother Whitmore's necklace tonight." The way she said "chose" made it sound like I'd stolen it from her jewelry box. David's jaw tightened beside me. We'd had this conversation before. The necklace was mine now. David had given it to me on our wedding day. "It looks beautiful on her, Mother," David said firmly. His hand found mine, squeezing gently. "Grandmother would have loved seeing it worn again." Margaret's eyes flashed with something dark. "Yes? Well, some things are meant for certain people, aren't they?" She walked away before either of us could respond, but I felt the chill of her words settle over me like a storm cloud. David tried to reassure me with jokes and champagne, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Margaret was planning something. If you are watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you are viewing from. Before I tell you about this life-changing decision, hit like and subscribe to hear more real stories about family loyalty and betrayal that might just change how you see your own relationships. 2 hours into the gala, I excused myself to use the restroom. The ladies' lounge was all marble and gold fixtures. I touched up my lipstick in the mirror, admiring how the necklace sparkled against my black dress. For a moment, I felt like I truly belonged in this world. That's when I overheard Margaret talking to her sister Eleanor in one of the stalls. "She's nothing but a gold digger, Eleanor. David can't see it, but I can. That little trailer trash. Girl is only after our family's money." My heart stopped. I stood frozen by the sinks, listening to every poisonous word. "The way she parades around wearing Mother's necklace like she earned it," Margaret continued. "It makes me sick. That necklace should have gone to David's future wife. Someone from our social circle. Someone worthy." "What are you going to do about it?" Eleanor asked. Margaret's laugh was cold as winter wind. "Tonight, I'm going to Show everyone exactly what kind of person she really is. I slipped out of the restroom before they saw me. My hands were shaking. Whatever Margaret was planning, I knew it wouldn't end well for me. But I had no idea just how far she was willing to go to destroy me. The rest of the evening felt like walking through a minefield. Every smile from Margaret felt like a threat. Every glance from the other guests made me wonder what they were thinking. Did they all see me the way she did? As an imposter who didn't belong? David noticed my distress during dinner. "Are you okay? You seem nervous." I wanted to tell him what I'd overheard. But this was his mother. How do you tell someone that the person who raised them sees you as the enemy? Instead, I squeezed his hand and smiled. "Just tired. It's been a long day." I had no idea how much longer it was about to become. Let me tell you how I ended up in this nightmare. Maybe then you'll understand why Margaret hated me so much. I met David Whitmore at the community college where I was taking night classes. I was 24, working 2 jobs, and trying to finish my degree in business administration. He was there teaching a guest lecture on nonprofit management. When I say it was love at first sight, I mean it literally changed my life trajectory. David was everything I'd never dared to dream of. Tall, with kind eyes and gentle hands that had never known hard work. He drove a BMW and wore clothes that cost more than my monthly rent. But what drew me to him wasn't his money. It was the way he listened when I talked. Like my words mattered. I grew up in Riverside Mobile Park on the outskirts of town. My mom, Linda, worked double shifts at the diner to keep food on our table. My dad left when I was 8. I learned early that life doesn't hand you anything. You fight for every opportunity, or you go without. The first time David picked me up at the trailer park, I watched his face carefully. Some guys would have turned around and driven away. David just smiled and said, "Your mom's garden is beautiful." He spent 20 minutes talking to her about her tomato plants. That's when I knew he was different. But meeting his family was like entering a different universe. The Whitmore estate sat on 50 acres of manicured grounds. The main house had 14 rooms and a staff of 6. Margaret greeted us at the front door wearing pearls and judgment in equal measure. She looked me up and down like I was something unpleasant stuck to David's shoe. "So you're the girl David's been telling us about," she said. Her smile never reached her eyes. How quaint. David's father, Robert, was kinder but distant. He worked constantly, traveling for his investment firm. When he was home, he hid behind newspapers and phone calls. He seemed to love David, but didn't have much energy left for anyone else. Then there was David's younger sister, Catherine. She was 28, fresh from her divorce, and living back at home with her twin daughters, Emma and Sophie. Catherine had her mother's sharp tongue, but also her father's tendency to avoid conflict. She stayed neutral in Margaret's war against me, which somehow felt worse than open hostility. The twins were 7 years old and absolutely precious. They had David's kind eyes and their grandmother's stubborn streak. Emma was the artist, always drawing pictures and making up stories. Sophie was the athlete, climbing trees and organizing elaborate games. They were the only ones in that house who accepted me without question. Margaret's sister Eleanor lived in the guest cottage and served as the family's unofficial spy network. She reported everyone's activities back to Margaret with the dedication of a court stenographer. She'd been widowed young and had never remarried. Her bitterness seeped into every conversation. The household staff rounded out this complex ecosystem. Mrs. Patterson, the housekeeper, had worked for the family for 30 years. She was professional but warm, treating everyone with the same respectful efficiency. Carlos, the groundskeeper, taught me about the roses in the garden. His wife Maria cooked meals that tasted like love itself. And then there was James, Margaret's personal assistant. He was young, ambitious, and completely devoted to making Margaret happy. He scheduled her appointments, organized her charity, work, and somehow anticipated her needs before she voiced them. I always felt like he was watching me, cataloging my mistakes for later reporting. David tried to shield me from the worst of it. He'd pull me away when Margaret made cutting remarks about my background. He'd change the subject when Eleanor asked pointed questions about my family's finances. But he couldn't be everywhere at once. The truth is, I loved David enough to endure his mother's hatred. I thought if I just tried harder, proved myself worthy, she'd eventually accept me. I volunteered for her charity committees. I learned proper etiquette from YouTube videos. I even took cooking lessons from Maria to prepare David's favorite meals. None of it mattered. Margaret had decided I was the enemy, and nothing I did would change her mind. Have you ever felt like you're constantly auditioning for a role you'll never get? That's what living with the Whitmores felt like. Every family dinner was a performance. Every holiday gathering was a test I was destined to fail. But I kept trying because I believed love could conquer anything. I was about to learn just how wrong I was. 3 weeks before the gala, something shifted in the Whitmore household. Margaret became almost pleasant toward me. She complimented my dress at Sunday dinner. She asked my opinion about flower arrangements for the charity event. She even invited me to join her for lunch at the country club. I should have known she was planning something. "I've been thinking," Margaret said over our Caesar salads. "Perhaps I've been too harsh with you, dear. You clearly make David happy, and that's what matters most." Her words felt like warm honey, but something underneath tasted bitter. Still, I wanted to believe she was finally accepting me. After 5 years of cold shoulders and cutting remarks, I was desperate for her approval. "I appreciate that, Margaret. I know this hasn't been easy for any of us." She reached across the table and patted my hand. Her touch felt like ice despite her warm smile. "I want to make amends. The gala is so important to our family's reputation. I'd love for you to help me ensure everything goes perfectly." That's how I ended up spending the next 3 weeks working closely with Margaret on every detail of the event. We selected the menu together. We approved the floral arrangements side by side. She even asked me to help her choose which jewelry to wear. During one of these planning sessions, Margaret casually mentioned the family necklace. "You know, Samantha, that necklace has quite a history. David's great-grandmother wore it when she married into European royalty. It's been passed down through generations of Whitmore brides." She showed me old photographs of elegant women wearing the stunning piece. Each bride looked regal, dignified, worthy of such a treasure. I wondered if I looked the same way when I wore it, or if everyone could tell I was just pretending to belong. "The insurance value is quite substantial," Margaret continued. "Over $2 million. We keep detailed records of when it's worn and for what occasions." I nodded, not thinking much of it at the time. Rich people were always obsessing over the value of their possessions. It seemed normal enough. Meanwhile, Catherine was dealing with her own drama. Her ex-husband Marcus had been pressuring her to move back to New York with the twins. He'd gotten a promotion and wanted his family nearby. Catherine was torn between her children's relationship with their father and her dependence on her mother's financial support. "I don't know what to do," she confided in me one afternoon while the girls played in the garden. "Marcus says he'll take me to court if I don't agree to move. But Mother will cut me off completely if I leave." I felt sorry for Catherine. She'd never learned to be independent the way I had. Money had always been her safety net, but now it felt more like a cage. "What do you want to do?" I asked. "Forget about everyone else's expectations. What would make you happiest?" She looked at me with surprise, like no one had ever asked her that question before. "I want my girls to have a relationship with their father, but I'm scared of starting over somewhere new." These conversations brought Catherine and me closer together. For the first time, she saw me as more than just the intruder who'd married her brother. We started having coffee together while the twins were at school. She began asking my advice about dating and job hunting. Margaret noticed this growing friendship and didn't like it one bit. "Catherine seems quite taken with you lately," she mentioned during one of our gala planning meetings. "I hope you're not filling her head with ideas about independence. She's been through enough trauma with the divorce." The way she said independence made it sound like a dirty word. I realized that Margaret's control over her children wasn't just about love. It was about power. She kept them dependent so they'd never challenge her authority. David had been traveling frequently for work, which left me alone with his family more often. I started noticing things I'd missed before. How Margaret monitored everyone's phone calls, how she controlled the household budget down to the penny, how she used guilt and money to manipulate her children's decisions. James, Margaret's assistant, became increasingly prominent during this period. He was always hovering nearby, taking notes, making arrangements. I caught him photographing family documents several times, claiming it was for organizational purposes. Something about James made me uncomfortable, but I couldn't put my finger on exactly what. He was too eager to please Margaret, too quick to agree with everything she said. It felt calculated rather than genuine. 2 days before the gala, Margaret surprised me with a special gift. "I want you to wear this tomorrow night," she said, presenting me with a beautiful diamond bracelet. It belonged to David's grandmother as well. "I think it will complement the necklace perfectly." I was genuinely touched by the gesture. Maybe she really had changed her mind about me. Maybe we could finally have the mother-daughter relationship I'd always hoped for. I should have known that Margaret Whitmore never gave anything without expecting something in return. The moment I'd been dreading finally arrived. It was almost midnight when Margaret approached me at the gala, her face a mask of concern and false sympathy. "Samantha, dear, could I speak with you privately? There. Seems to be a small problem." She guided me toward the coat check area, away from the crowd. My stomach twisted with anxiety. David was across the room talking to potential donors for the hospital. I wished he was beside me for whatever was coming. "What's wrong?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Margaret's expression shifted from concern to cold satisfaction. "I'm afraid someone has reported that a valuable piece of jewelry has gone missing from the silent auction display. The police are on their way." My blood turned to ice water. "What does that have to do with me?" "Well, dear, you were seen near the auction table earlier, and given your background, I'm sure you understand how this looks." Before I could process what was happening, 2 security guards appeared beside us. One of them was speaking into his radio. The other kept his hand near his holstered weapon. "Ma'am, we need to ask you a few questions," the first guard said. His name tag read, Peterson. "There's been a report of stolen merchandise." "I haven't stolen anything," I said, my voice shaking. "This is some kind of mistake." Margaret placed her hand on Peterson's arm. "I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding, but perhaps we should search her purse, just to be thorough. For everyone's peace of mind." The second guard, Martinez, stepped closer. "Ma'am, we'd appreciate your cooperation. May we look through your personal belongings?" I handed over my small clutch purse with trembling fingers. Inside was my phone, lipstick, breath mints, and my driver's license. Nothing else. Peterson examined each item carefully while Margaret watched with hawk-like intensity. Nothing here, Peterson said. Ma'am, were you carrying anything else? This evening? A larger bag, perhaps? No, just this, I replied. I don't understand what's missing or why you think I took it. That's when Margaret played her MasterCard. Officers, I hate to suggest this, but perhaps you should check her person more thoroughly. Sometimes people hide things in creative places. The implication hit me like a physical blow. She wanted them to strip search me in front of all these people, to humiliate me completely. That's enough. David's voice cut through the tension like a sword. He appeared at my side, his face darker than I'd ever seen it. What exactly is going on here? Margaret's mask of concern returned instantly. Oh, David, there you are. Someone reported missing jewelry from the auction display. The security team is just being thorough. What jewelry? David demanded. I was just at that table 10 minutes ago. Everything looked normal. Peterson consulted his notes. A diamond bracelet valued at $50,000. Mrs. Whitmore Sr. reported it missing and suggested we speak with your wife. My heart stopped. The bracelet. The one Margaret had given me just 2 days ago. I looked down at my wrist where it sparkled innocently in the ballroom light. You mean this bracelet? I asked, raising my arm. The security guards exchanged glances. Peterson spoke into his radio again. Margaret's face went completely white. That's not possible, Margaret stammered. That bracelet was donated for the auction by the Henderson family. I saw it on the display table myself. Mother, David's voice was dangerously quiet. You gave Samantha that bracelet yourself. I was there when you presented it to her. The pieces were falling into place now. Margaret had planned this entire scenario. She'd given me jewelry that was supposed to be in the auction, then reported it stolen. She'd tried to frame me for theft in front of 500 witnesses. But she'd made one crucial mistake. James appeared at Margaret's elbow, looking panicked. He whispered something in her ear. Her face went from white to gray. Mrs. Whitmore, Martinez said, we're going to need to sort this out. Can you explain how your daughter-in-law is wearing jewelry that was allegedly stolen from the auction? That's when the real fireworks started. David pulled out his phone and showed Peterson a video he'd taken 2 days earlier. In it, Margaret was clearly presenting me with the bracelet, calling it a family heirloom. This video is time-stamped, David said coldly. My mother gave my wife this bracelet 48 hours ago. Margaret opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Around us, other gala attendees had begun to notice the commotion. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wildfire. Ma'am, Peterson said to Margaret, it appears there's been some confusion. Can you clarify your earlier statement about this jewelry being stolen? For the first time in 5 years, I watched Margaret Whitmore have absolutely no idea what to say. But the night wasn't over yet. It was about to get much worse for her. What happened next still gives me chills when I think about it. James, who had been frantically whispering with Margaret, suddenly stepped forward. His face was pale and sweaty. I need to tell you something, he said to the security guards. There's been a terrible mistake. Margaret grabbed his arm. James, not now. But James shook her off. No, Mrs. Whitmore. I can't do this anymore. He turned to Peterson. The bracelet wasn't the only thing. She asked me to plant other jewelry in Mrs. David Whitmore's coat. I put a necklace and earrings from the auction in her jacket pocket. The ballroom went completely silent. 500 people held their breath as Peterson radioed for backup. Margaret's face crumbled as the magnitude of her scheme unraveled. Check her coat, James said. pointing to the coat check area. Number 47. There's at least $20,000 worth of auction jewelry that she planned to find on Mrs. Whitmore. David looked at his mother with complete disgust. You tried to frame my wife for grand theft? In front of everyone we know? Margaret started crying then, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage and humiliation. She doesn't deserve this life, she screamed. She's trailer trash. She's using you for your money. Ma'am, please keep your voice down, Martinez said. More security had arrived, along with 2 actual police officers. They found exactly what James had described in my coat pocket. Expensive jewelry that had been carefully documented for the silent auction. Margaret's fingerprints were all over the evidence bags. Mrs. Margaret Whitmore, Officer Rodriguez said, you're under arrest for attempted fraud and filing a false police report. As they handcuffed her in front of 500 of the city's elite, Margaret looked at me with pure hatred. This isn't over, she hissed. I'll make sure everyone knows what you really are. But everyone already knew what I really was now. I was the daughter-in-law who'd been set up by a bitter woman who couldn't accept losing control of her son. David held me while I cried in the car on the way home. I'm so sorry, he kept saying. I had no idea she would go this far. The next morning, the story was front-page news. Socialite arrested for framing. Daughter-in-law at charity gala. The security footage had been leaked to the media. Everyone could see Margaret's face when she realized her plan had failed. If you're dealing with toxic family members who make you question your worth, please know that their behavior says everything about them and nothing about you. Like this video if you've ever felt like an outsider in your own family. David and I went to couples therapy for 6 months after that night. We had to rebuild trust that had been damaged by years of his mother's manipulation. He had to acknowledge how his silence had enabled her behavior. I had to learn to speak up for myself instead of trying to win approval from people who would never give it. Catherine surprised everyone by moving to New York with the twins. She said watching her mother get arrested had been a wake-up call about the price of depending on toxic people for security. Last I heard, she'd started her own consulting business and was dating a teacher who coached the girls' soccer team. 1 year later, David and I had renewed our vows in a small ceremony at the beach. Just immediate family and close friends. No drama, no politics, just love and commitment. The twins served as flower girls and stole the show with their matching pink dresses. Margaret was sentenced to community service and probation. She was also required to attend anger management classes. She sold the family estate and moved to Florida, claiming she needed a fresh start. We haven't spoken since the trial. James testified against Margaret in exchange for a reduced sentence. He admitted that she'd been planning various schemes to discredit me for over a year. The bracelet setup was just her most elaborate attempt. He said she'd promised him a substantial bonus if he could find evidence that I was cheating on David or stealing from the family. The most beautiful part of this whole nightmare was discovering who really had my back. Mrs. Patterson, the housekeeper, had actually witnessed Margaret planting evidence and was prepared to testify on my behalf. Carlos and Maria sent us flowers and a note saying they'd always known I was good for David. Even some of Margaret's society friends reached out to apologize for believing her stories about me over the years. Sometimes the worst experiences teach us the most valuable lessons about who we really are. Here I am, 2 years later, sitting in the home David and I built together. Not the family estate with its cold marble and colder memories, but a cozy house with a garden where I grow vegetables like my mother taught me. The real question everyone asks is, how did I survive having my character assassinated in front of 500 people? The answer is simpler than you might think. I stopped trying to be someone else. For 5 years, I'd twisted myself into impossible shapes trying to fit Margaret's definition of worthy. I'd hidden my background, apologized for my family, and made myself small in hopes of earning acceptance. That night at the gala, when she tried to destroy me, I realized something profound. Her opinion of me had never been about me at all. Margaret saw me as a threat because I represented everything she couldn't control. I'd worked for everything I had. I'd loved her son without an agenda. I'd treated the household staff with respect because that's how my mother raised me. These weren't flaws to be ashamed of. They were strengths to be proud of. David and I are stronger now than we've ever been, not because we survived a crisis, but because we finally learned to communicate honestly. He had to confront his pattern of avoiding conflict instead of protecting me. I had to learn that asking for support isn't the same as being weak. We had our first baby 6 months ago. Little Emma Catherine Whitmore has David's gentle eyes and what I hope is my stubborn determination. When I hold her, I think about the world I want to create for her, one where she never has to choose between being herself and being accepted. Catherine visits us regularly with her twins. She's thriving in New York, building a life on her own terms. The girls love having a baby cousin and beg to help with feedings and diaper changes. They call me Aunt Sam now, and it means more to me than any formal title ever could. Have you ever noticed how people's true characters emerge during crisis moments? The gala taught me to pay attention to who stands with you when everything falls apart versus who disappears when things get messy. Mrs. Patterson now works for us part-time, helping with the baby. She brings wisdom and warmth to our home that no amount of money could buy. She often tells stories about David's childhood that reveal the gentle heart I fell in love with. The funny thing about surviving Margaret's attempt to ruin me is that it actually freed me. I stopped worrying about impressing people who were determined to find fault anyway. I started focusing on building relationships with people who valued authenticity over appearances. My mother visits us every Sunday for dinner. She and David have developed their own special friendship based on their shared love of gardening and terrible dad jokes. Watching them together fills my heart in ways I didn't know were possible. The trailer park where I grew up is being converted into affordable housing units. David and I donated money to ensure families have safe, dignified places to live while they work toward their dreams. Margaret would probably roll her eyes at the gesture, but it represents everything I believe about lifting people up instead of keeping them down. James reached out to me last year with a letter of apology. He's working as a bookkeeper for a small nonprofit now and says he's learned the difference between loyalty and enabling. I wrote him back, wishing him well. Everyone deserves a chance to do better when they know better. I still wear the family necklace sometimes, but now it feels different around my neck. It's not a symbol of whether I belong or not. It's a reminder that worth isn't determined by other people's approval. If you're watching this and dealing with someone who makes you feel like you're not enough, I want you to know something. You don't need anyone's permission to take up space in this world. Your background doesn't determine your worth. Your kindness isn't weakness. Your dreams aren't too big. Please subscribe for more stories about finding your strength when people try to tear you down. Leave a comment telling me about a time you had to choose between being accepted and being authentic. I read every single one, and your stories inspire me more than you know. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that they're already enough, exactly as they are. Sometimes we all need reminding that the people who try to make us feel small are usually struggling with feeling small themselves. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, the best revenge against people who underestimate you is becoming everything they said you couldn't be. And sometimes, if you're really lucky, it's watching them get arrested on live television.